John Richards, you are a professor at Simon Fraser University, and you are one of the authors of this independent look at the HST. So I was wondering if you could clarify a few things. A claim that this HST is going to create more jobs, and therefore it's good for us. What is the evidence of that claim, that compared to past months, on past years, and how many jobs you create and how many jobs you lose? Is there any evidence that in fact this HST is to advantage of society in general?
You've posed several questions there. Let's take them one by one.
Okay.
The big question, is there an advantage to the economy? And I would say, with qualifications, yes, there is an advantage. Now, why? One quick answer is to say, well, 130 countries have used the basic principle underlying the HST, and presumably they wouldn't have done it if it was bad for their economy. I make the analogy with the income tax. What governments do essentially is they tax income and they tax consumption. And in the case of British Columbia, both taxes are roughly of similar importance. Now, will it create more jobs? There it's more problematic. The result that we used was much more modest than some of the projections from other economic models. And personally, I don't put much weight on the idea of increasing employment. I think the employment rate in general depends on many other things, such as how generous is the employment insurance system, or a recession in the economy. What I think the HST will probably do is to encourage more productive investments, and in the longer run mean that the average income of people in British Columbia go up. Not by a great deal, but by some.
Consumption taxes apparently is a regressive tax, because most people end up paying the same, although you have different incomes. Whereas an income tax, you pay according to your income. So why would this consumption tax, which according to CCPA would be regressive, why would it be better than canceling all PST, GST, and HST and collecting taxes from income tax?
Well, let's take your last question first. Okay. If we eliminated all the consumption tax and we relied only on an income tax, you would then wind up with income tax rates which were in the range of 70 to 80%.
For some people, you mean?
For some people. And by the time you have so-called marginal tax rates where they're at 70 to 80%, you have such a huge incentive for tax avoidance, tax evasion, it doesn't work. And the proof of this really is that no country in the Western world, I include there Japan, China, Vietnam, Australia, can impose income tax rates of 75%. It just doesn't work. So what happens is that in all economies, there are both taxes on consumption and taxes on income. A final argument, I think, that should be made here is that even if the progressive income tax is progressive and in principle means that richer people must pay a higher share of their income as income tax, the rich have tax lawyers, tax lawyers, tax accountants. Okay. And one of the virtues probably of value-added taxes is that it does make the rich actually pay for their consumption. And while it's not progressive, nor is it regressive, it is essentially a proportional tax.
Proportional to?
Income. So if you, very roughly, an HST or a value-added tax is percentage of your consumption.
The other argument that I hear people say, and anti-HST, is that it's shifting business taxes to general people's consumers taxes. And I noticed that also in a lot of municipalities where they're lowering the business taxes and increasing the property owners taxes. What is the advantage of lowering or shifting taxes from businesses to people in general?
Well, again, you've got to make the distinction between who is a tax levied on and who actually pays it. And with the old provincial sales tax, the tax may have been levied on the firm or the store as opposed to being levied on the consumer, but firms would pass through the tax. And it's a very complicated exercise to try and estimate who ultimately bears a tax. There's probably some modest increase in taxes shifted from major firms to consumers by the shift from the old tax to the new tax. And we in our report made an estimate of that. But we argued that...
You're calling for $1.3 billion, something like that, as a shift. 1.3 or $1.6 billion.
We had a slightly less than that. But the details here are less important than trying to get at the essence of the problem.
Okay.
And the essence of the problem is that there's always going to be tax shifting going on in an economy where those who are taxed will attempt to shift that onto someone else. And if you want, in a productive economy, you want people who invest to look at what are the costs of making the investment, how much does it cost to make a better factory, buy a better machine, etc. And then if we're concerned about the income distribution results that come out, then we'll worry about taxing profits, taxing income, taxing consumption. But what the old system did was to totally randomly add a certain amount to the costs of buying investment goods, which meant that less investment was made in British Columbia than should be made.
So I hear you saying that investors will shy away from investing here if there is a higher tax.
Well, I mean, look, you don't want arbitrarily to say, okay, if you invest in new equipment, we're going to tax that new equipment as opposed to taxing profits and wages. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want, if some corner shop can be more efficient because it makes a better investment in its display cases in the shop, well, we want that shop to do it. Why would we arbitrarily deny them that?
So you're saying that the taxes still come in as profits. Businesses are still paying their profit tax.
Well, yes, we're still going to have to charge taxes on profits and taxes on income. Now, there's a more general issue you may want to be addressing here, which has not a great deal to do with this HST debate. That if you look across Canada and the United States and Britain over the last 30 years, incomes have become more unequal, and there is a problem.
Why is that?
How do you address it is a big concern. You address it in part by better education, because obviously what's happened in many cases is the demand for workers who have manual skills has gone down, and the good-paying jobs require more education. That's one way of trying to tackle the inequalities.
Why is BC have to pay $1.6 billion back to Ottawa?
But the nature of that agreement was if British Columbia goes back to the old provincial sales tax, which is the subject of the referendum in front of us, then Ottawa can quite legitimately say, well, you didn't follow through on the terms of the agreement. Please give us back the $1.6 billion.
Yeah. It's still unclear to me why would the federal government pay BC $1.6 billion to make a change when in fact they're most people will understand that that's their own money going from one pocket to another. It's not like they're giving us, but it's their own money that's coming to us.
Well, it's the same. Why would Ottawa share the costs of running Medicare? The politicians in Ottawa, I think correctly, approve of Medicare, and they want that the provinces organize their Medicare system with certain rules and conditions, and they say, if you do that, we'll share the cost. Now, I mean, look, let's be fair here. There are real problems with making the change. It's not, the government should, in my opinion, and that was the opinion of others on this panel, have undertaken much more extensive discussion with people before they made the change. Also, the change has not turned out to be revenue neutral. It has resulted in collecting more money via this tax than would have been generated via the old sales tax. The government should have been clearer on that. So I'm not trying to make the case that this is unambiguously a beneficial change.
I heard some in legislating poverty years ago from Jim Swanson that were saying it's not the size of the economy that matters, but how do you cut the pie? So I hear you saying it's better for the economy, and the question is, who is the economy and how is that either bigger or smaller pie divided? And when you said before that a lot of countries in Europe have the income gap has widened, you know, I wonder what are we doing with this tax shift? Is that income tax going to widen, or is it going to be more egalitarian?
Well, look, these are very big issues. What's the role of the market? What's the role of the tax system? And my suggestion to you is, let us settle this small issue about how we organize the consumption tax. And I think it's personally more efficient to organize it with the HST than to go back. And we can carry on this discussion about the bigger issues of how we need to regulate markets, how we raise taxes.
Well, thank you very much, John.
Okay, I wish you well. And
all right.
We'll see how people decide.
All right.
Have you got your ballot?
I have my ballot, and I was thinking, what a waste of papers, because there's 4 envelopes, one coming in, one going out, another the ballot is in, another the secret ballot is in. And I thought they could.
My ballot yet. I hope it's going to come soon.
They could just have a computer on the public library where people can go with ID and just open an account and vote, and you would save a lot of trees.
That's true too. That's a good suggestion. Maybe that's what you should add that to the program. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.